Hi, this is Cherie Cornick. I'm putting a corrugated button band on my sweater here. It's going to have a mitered corner up here at the top, and the buttonholes are being done in the dark main color. This button band was picked up on the right side with the dark main color, knit around to the other side, and then the first row was knit on the wrong side. It will have two central accent color rows because the buttonhole, the one row, that's actually more than one row, buttonhole will lay between these two accent color rows. So in order to accomplish that, and to have this buttonhole have a dark edging on each side, when I did the first row of accent color, you can see I did the main color, which is the darkest green, and then the medium green for 2 rows, then the light green for 2 rows. Then I did one row that was on the right side with the dark green and the accent color. But when I got to where the buttonholes will be, and it's going to be a 5-stitch buttonhole, I knit those 5 stitches in the dark color. And then, because I couldn't have the contrasting color, the accent color, go across that buttonhole, I broke the yarn, left about 12, 18 inches, so I'd have plenty to hold on to when I come back, and knit back this way between these buttonholes. And then on the other side, after I completed those 5 knit stitches, then I started another thread of end of the accent color that's going to be in the second row as well. Knit this row up to here, and again broke off and left myself a long enough tail to get back here. So now I've knit around on the right side with this first row of the accent color, and I've come back on the wrong side. So I came back here, there's my second row of accent color, did my miter at the corner, and this miter for a 90-degree miter has an increase on every row. On the wrong sides, I increase with an E cast on with the dark color, the main color, and on the right sides, I increase with a E cast on each side of these markers, one on each side of the marker, with the accent color, or the contrasting color. So all right, now I've done the one row buttonhole right here, but you can see it's going to lay right between those 2 rows of accent color. So I've done the first one, I've done the second one, I'm knitting between, so I'm on the wrong side here. I'm doing my corrugated ribbing flat on the wrong side. So I have my background color in my right hand, my pattern color in my left. I have to keep both of these yarns toward me on the wrong side of the fabric. So there's a pearl in the contrasting color, a knit, because all of my knit stitches in the main color, all of my stitches as looking at it from the front on the main color are pearls. And I did that for a very specific reason, and it has to do with these buttonholes. So I've got this is my tail that I broke off before. my purl, knit, yarn to the back, purl, excuse me, yarn to the front, knit, well, there's a problem. I see what happened. I split that stitch. There it is. Knit the stitch. Purl. And now I'm knitting the stitch that is just before the buttonhole marker. All right. So I'm going to get this contrasting yarn out of the way. Remove the buttonhole marker. And before I slip this first stitch, let me see here. Here. What happened here was I let the contrasting color go in front of that stitch that I knit in it. That cannot be. It would have made a bar right across the stitch. All right, so now I have it back where it belongs. Okay. So this is the stitch that I have. This is the stitch before the buttonhole. So I knit that one. These are the 5 stitches of the buttonhole. I'm going to take the first stitch and wrap it so that it'll make a nice crisp corner to the buttonhole. All right, I'm going to put it back on my right needle, slip the next one, and pass this slip stitch over. So then I'm going to do that again. 1, 2, 3 times. Now that's 4 slip stitches that are passed over. Take off the other end of this buttonhole marker. And now I'm going to take the stitch that's outside the buttonhole and pass the last buttonhole stitch over. One of the reasons it's a good idea to make the stitches, if you're going to make a dark buttonhole, make the stitches at each end of it and purl stitch. It's so that this stitch that's passed over here isn't actually seen. It looks like it's part of the purl. All right, so now that last stitch is put back on my left needle. All right. Turn the work. We're working on the right side now. And on the right side, what I'm doing is casting on the buttonhole, the top of the buttonhole. So here's my working yarn back here where I dropped it off at the beginning of the buttonhole. And I'm going to put that around this stitch just to make sure it's nice and neat. All right, so I'm going to cast on 6 stitches. Now, if you remember, I said that this is a 5-stitch buttonhole. So regardless of the size buttonhole you make, you cast on 1 stitch more than were slipped for the buttonhole. So there's the outside stitch. There's the outside stitch. I've cast on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Before I put that sixth one on, I'm going to bring this yarn to the front, because when I turn it around, I'm going to need it for purling. For knitting, excuse me. All right, so now that last stitch is over here on, cast on over here. I'm going to take the stitch that's the other end of the buttonhole, put it over here on my left needle, and take this extra stitch and pass it over the top. So that gives us a nice, neat end of the buttonhole right there. Now, I'm going to turn my work again. And after I turn my work, that last stitch that I slipped the stitch over is going to go back on my left needle, and I'm going to knit it because it hasn't been worked at all yet. All right, so that's knit. Bring my yarn to the back because I'm on the wrong side. And this tail, this is the tail that I broke off as I finished knitting in the last row. I'm going to bring that underneath this working yarn, this green working yarn, so that it closes up a hole, doesn't leave a hole. It's the same sort of thing you do with intarsia. When you're changing colors of yarn, you bring it underneath, the new one underneath the old one. So there's a purl stitch. This is my main color. It's purl on. When I look at it on the right side, it's going to be knit when I'm working on the wrong side. What's that? Oh. Knit. And now I can purl and work to the next stitch, to the next buttonhole, I mean. So, purling on the wrong side, working corrugated ribbing on the wrong side can be a little bit tricky. Like, you don't, after knitting, you don't leave the yarn in the front. It has to come to the back there. Okay, so now, knit stitch, take it to the back side, knit. Bring it to the front side, purl. Take it to the back side, knit. Bring it to the front side, purl. And that purl thread has to keep staying on the front side. Sometimes my hands just want to move it. You know, it's like, okay, you purl, now it should go back. Now it should go in the other direction. But it doesn't. It stays right here because we don't want any bars of the wrong color across our corrugated ribbing. If they are, you'll see them on the next row and you can fix it pretty easily. So there we are. Another buttonhole complete. Looks pretty good. There's the bottom of it. The top is right here. The ends look nice, and we'll see what they look like when I do the next row. So only a few more to go.